Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today, we'll be discussing how Christians can stand up against the vile hate that's been directed against our Jewish community and Israel. And in this program today, I'm joined by two good friends. They are Tim Gutmann and also Haley Ace. So guys, warm welcome to the Middle East Report. Good to have you on the program.
So much.
Great to be here.
And Tim, do you want to give our viewers an update on the excellent work you guys are doing through the Christian Action Against Anti-Semitism? Because I know that so much going on. You're a pastor of a church as well. This is a full-time job as well as being a pastor. So do you want to give our viewers an update?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we continue to show up to Jewish-led events to show Christians stand with them, love them, support them. That's important. So we're there really regularly. We've had the opportunity to speak at various places to convey that message, and that continues. To be honest, it's been so busy, as you know, for like 16 months, but it's been a real opportunity. And, we feel like this is a key chance for the church, for Christians to show they stand with the Jewish people at this dark hour.
Excellent. And Haley, I've got to thank you for being such a leading light and such an example of Christian love to Israel and the Jewish people. You're now a kind of Christian celebrity
No.
in that kind of Jewish world and in social media. And I can't actually think of how far you've actually come since you were last on the programme with Tim back in November of 2023, only 6 weeks after the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history and the largest massacre of Jewish people we've seen in one single day since the Holocaust. Just share with us this incredible journey that you've been on over those months.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much. And it was so nice to be on your show that last time, and it has been 16 months of a blur, because those 16 months have been packed, jammed full of so much pain and sorrow and heartbreak, just holding people's hands as they have faced the worst time in Jewish modern history. As you know, I've been on and helped organise lots of events, lots of vigils, lots of rallies for the hostages, for the survivors, and just been a friend. And I think that's the most important thing, just being a really good friend to people.
So let's unpack what you've been involved in over that time. So you've appeared on Israeli TV programs.
Yeah. Oh yes. Okay.
There is loads of articles about you in the Jewish and Israeli press.
Yes.
You've even appeared in a kind of music video take on "Do They Know It's Christmas," but with a spin of putting Hamas in a bad light.
Yeah.
You've been invited to the president's residence. You have won the Jewish Care Woman of Distinction Awards, and the first non-Jewish woman ever to receive that award, plus an award with the Zionist Christian.
The World Zionist
World
Organization.
Zionist. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So just unpack some of the places that you've been.
Yes.
All because of your love for Israel and the Jewish people on social media.
Yeah, okay. This is the thing, I never want to brag and say, look at all of these awards, because really my heart is just to stand with the Jewish people and be like a sister and a friend, and to have this strong message that hatred is unacceptable, that we will not tolerate anti-Semitism, and that absolutely we will call out hatred where it exists. And if it is coming from jihadists and radical Islamists, that should be very confidently and very strongly, we should be talking about it. So yeah, it's weird. I don't want to say all the things that I've done, but you are right. I did have tea with the president of Israel, which was really lovely. He invited me over and we spoke for about 45 minutes in his office and had Herzog, President Herzog, and we had a photo. I haven't actually put any photographs out there because I didn't want to be braggy, but yeah, I've been invited into really amazing places and have made incredible connections, purely because I think people can see the heart, the general sincerity of where my heart is, and our heart to stand with the Jewish people and to encourage other Christians to do the same. Also have been up front and centre with counter-protest groups to counter the hatred, because whilst prayer as a Christian is so important, it doesn't exclude you from actually standing in action. Love in action is so important. So we've been doing that, haven't we? And I've been on many different podcasts and shows. Most recently I was on the Quad with Fleur Hassan in Israel. Great program. I was on I-24, Channel 11 in Israel, and various news articles. I actually was in The Guardian over here in the UK and The Telegraph, and lots of different things, because I think we're seeing so much weakness from institutional church leadership, such from the Pope and from the Archbishop of Canterbury, that really the people are looking to grassroots movements and leaders to actually start speaking up, and who are not afraid to really stand for truth in a strong way without fear of offence.
Excellent. No, you're doing a great job. Really appreciate it. Both of you are doing a great
Thank
job. And Tim, what's it like now being married to a famous Christian activist and social media influencer now, who's absolutely loved and adored by the Jewish community, and nearly everyone knows Hayley now in the British Jewish community and also in Israel as well?
Yeah, no, obviously. To be honest, being married's the same as it was before, you know. She was so well loved and received. The thing is with Hayes, you know, I'll tell you now, she's sincere. And the thing that actually is powerful for people is that she genuinely loves people, you know, genuinely cares, and she's so easy to connect with. So obviously I'm very proud of her, and really, really just so blessed, so thankful of the impact she's having. But I want everyone to know, you know, it comes from such a real place. She genuinely cares, you know. She's so feisty naturally, so she's using that for good.
Very good, very good. It's good to be feisty. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN news report that focuses on this new documentary that really does show us where we are ever since October the 7th, with this fundamental attack against Israel, but also this unprecedented wave of Jew hatred against the Jewish people that really came out of the horrors of October the 7th.
8 years in the making, the production of Why Stand With Israel involved numerous trips to the Holy Land and interviews with top Christian and Jewish leaders.
This is God's land. This is probably the only country that has a deed signed by God, where He gave it to a specific people group and put them in a land for one reason, and that is to bless the entire world.
When we get Israel out of the equation, we miss a big part of God's plan of salvation.
I'm excited, and I pray that those that would watch our film, they would see God's heart on display for why He chose the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, because this is the only people group and land He made an everlasting covenant with.
The film debuts with anti-Semitism growing to levels not seen since World War II, and anti-Israel protests on college campuses spreading chaos, fear, and shutting down graduation ceremonies. Director Brian Sanders says this all leads to a divine message.
We've seen such diabolical hatred and just prejudice and bias against the Jewish people on college campuses, and it is truly rampant. And you know, the church was silent during the Holocaust, and I believe nowadays we can't afford as believers, as Christians, to be silent again against God's people and His nation that He calls His. And so I believe it's truly important for such a time as this, that I believe God is shaking the church and say, I want you to stand with my people.
If they're God's chosen people and the apple of His eye, why have they been the most hated group, the most persecuted group from the beginning of time?
Well, I believe it's a spiritual battle. I mean, Israel, Jerusalem itself is the most contested piece of real estate on the planet. And since the beginning of time, since the days of Pharaoh, I mean, the enemy of God has been against God's people. And unfortunately, we're seeing even anti-Semitism within the church. And that cannot happen. We can't allow that.
Sanders reinforces that blessings follow those who stand with Israel.
What comes to mind is Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless thee, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. We need to be on the side of God.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
So let's all stand with Israel to get that blessing that comes from Genesis 12:1-3, that I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you, because our Jewish friends really need our friendship and our support right now. Hayley, you have a big presence on social media, particularly on Instagram, where you're popping up here, there and everywhere. But literally share with us the challenge of standing up for Israel on Instagram, and also the hate that also has come your way because of it.
No problem. I think when you get to our age, you know, it's not natural to go on social media because it feels like it's the domain of the young. And so it was a big decision to go on to Instagram, especially when you start advocating for something like this in these times when moral clarity is in short supply and where people can't seem to discern actual wickedness anymore, or where they see evil as good and good as evil. So I started on Instagram last year just because I felt that actually we need to be vocal in terms of actually individuals just standing up and saying this is incorrect, hatred is wrong, anti-Semitism is evil, we need to be standing up. And then it's kind of springboarded from that, I guess. There is a lot of hatred. There is a lot of hatred on social media, and there's also a lot of hatred when I will go from counter-protest live, because there's a lot of Islamist sympathisers, and there's a lot of people who support this type of terrorism inadvertently. So I do get death threats, I get people threatening to kill my children, but these are trolls online who would do it to anybody. The hostage families get it. So that none of that bothers me, because it's important that we do not let fear dictate our actions. A lot of people I speak to say, you know, are you not afraid of saying something because, one, you might offend somebody, two, you might be attacked, or somebody might be unkind to you. And I say, well, if our God, who says he is for us, then who can be against us, who tells us to be strong and courageous, and he only needs to tell us to be strong and courageous because we're going to be fearful sometimes. When it's the right thing to do, we have to be strong and courageous regardless of whatever the cost is. That is really where I stand.
That's excellent. And Tim, I know that you and Hayley have been, ever since October the 7th, been very much involved in not only organising your own rallies for the hostages and rallies against Jew hatred, and also in solidarity with Israel. Just share with us the importance that these rallies have to bring comfort to the Jewish people and the Jewish community at this time, who feel very scared, who feel very vulnerable and very frightened.
Yeah, I think they're really important. Actually, we don't think so much we're affecting British public opinion because people are still silent. What we do know is it brings a lot of comfort to the Jewish community. There's a lot of trauma, and that's actually a huge chance for us to be seen and hold our banners that say Christians stand with Israel, with the Jewish people. Actually, it's about being visible, about being public. You know, the Bible says, Paul said to Timothy, you know, declare the scripture publicly, declare truth. We want Israel and the Jewish people to hear the truth, which is that, this is about right and wrong. It's clear. Israel is defending itself, and actually we want them to hear the truth that we believe in them. We believe that God's covenant with them is forever. We believe they are a blessing to the world. They're a blessing to us spiritually. We have a debt of gratitude. And so for us, it's so important to do this publicly, you know.
Excellent. And Hayley, I've seen some of your kind of Instagram videos, because my wife's on Instagram, I'm not, so I get to see them. Just share what it's like when you're at these rallies, either for the hostages or they're rallies about combating the rise of Jew hatred, or they're in solidarity with Israel, and then you see the pro-Palestinian marchers and their vile hatred. Almost, they are advocating for that horrendous death cult known as Hamas. Yeah. Share with us some of the awful experiences that you've had when you've come to face with these Palestinian protesters.
Personally, I've had people shout to me, go back to Poland, where they think I'm Jewish because I have a Star of David on my hat. I've been sworn at, I've been, told to go to hell and, die, Zionists should die. There's everything that you can imagine at these things. And what's really awful is that when you see the silence of the general silent majority, we like to call them, I think people have a disconnect that because the Jewish people are the current target, they think it doesn't affect them whatsoever. If we look at the enemy of Israel, if we look at the enemy of the Jewish people, it is radical Islam, and they are also wanting to push a caliphate which affects Christians, which is why you have the Boko Haram going after Christians in Nigeria. They're going after the Hindus in Bangladesh. This is an ideology that is not just out for the Jewish people, it's out for everybody. So even more so, we should be standing and saying this is unacceptable. We see absolute support from some people of Hezbollah and Hamas. We have clerics shouting out that Hezbollah and Hamas are not terrorists, that they are resistance groups, and they are kind of influencing a whole generation of young people into thinking that, you know, there is context to murder young children in their beds in Israel because of 1948, Nakba, and all of these little kind of words that they've found, occupation, apartheid, the Nakba 1948. And so therefore they excuse hatred and acts that are so vile and evil, such as kidnapping babies and burning people alive, because of the oppressed narrative. When actually, if you look at it, this is all coming from the Islamic regime, this is in their charter, and so anything you can imagine that's in the charter is replicated on these marches.
Which is a call for genocide.
Which is an absolute call for the complete destruction of Israel from the river to the sea. They say it, I believe it, they say it very clearly what they want. They want to create a country called Palestine, a state that has never existed since, you know, tell me who the leader of Palestine used to be before 1948 if it was such a country. Who was the king? What was its currency? Tell me its culture. There is no such place. And so this Islamic revolution wants to come through and they want to colonize a country full of Jews and Arabs and call it a country called Palestine. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing Islamic colonization.
Absolutely.
And you have people marching against colonialism.
And the sad thing, isn't it, is that the issue of Gaza is being used to kind of radicalize Islamists in this country, rally the Islamic community behind the Gaza cause in order to bring about an Islamic state in this country and the West as well.
It's the red herring and it's the Trojan horse of the Islamic regime, is the Free Palestine movement. So you focus on an oppressed people in a place called Gaza who is so oppressed and all of this narrative, and then you can hide what your real intentions are behind that red herring, and we see it happening, and it's being partnered with all over the West.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. And let's have a look now at this excellent report put together by Dale Hurd at CBN that actually looks at how the Jewish community are fearful with this unprecedented rise of Jew hatred in this country as they face this wave of Jew hatred and hatred against them.
This is the United Kingdom that British Jews experience today.
Zionists, they are filthy animals.
Like obedient sheep, you obey Israel.
The whole condemning Hamas, I'm not going to condemn them, and Israel doesn't exist.
Most British Jews now no longer believe they have a future here. Recent polling has also found that most Jews hide their Jewishness in public and do not feel welcome in the United Kingdom. Gideon Falter is chief executive of Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, which commissioned the poll and has been documenting the rising Jew hatred.
A lot of people have talked about whether they have a future in this country. Do I think the Jewish community in the UK is going to evaporate? No. But I do think there is a sizable conversation now happening within the community of people saying, okay, is this the place that we've got a future?
There were nearly 2,000 anti-Semitic incidents reported in the first half of 2024, the highest number ever recorded for a 6-month period. 9 out of 10 British Jews say the government is not doing enough to stop the violence and discrimination.
I know some who have left. I know some who are actively, seriously looking at leaving.
Jewish investigative journalist David Collier tells us he constantly feels the anti-Jewish hate.
I get death threats every single day, but I'm also being contacted by Jews either who are having trouble at work, at home, students.
What brings you both out here today?
Well, just the amount of anti-Semitism we've had in Oxford for the past year has been really awful. We've had swastikas, we've had Jews being accused of weaponising anti-Semitism.
We've been told we're not welcome at the university.
Yeah, and it just...
down the streets.
It's been escalating, and this is the big message, it's about the escalation, you know, it's getting gradually worse.
This in a nation where the adopted national song is Jerusalem. In the song Jerusalem, the British sing, "We will not cease till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." But this Judeo-Christian connection that goes back centuries has begun to fray. Surveys show British Jews consider Islamists to be the most serious threat. And in a close second is the far left. Falter adds the nation's young people are being indoctrinated against Jews.
They are becoming radicalized on the internet. They are imbibing bigotries that their parents themselves don't have. And then they're teaching this from one kid to another kid. We've got a generation which is extremely hateful. And not just hateful, they're extremists.
Some non-Jews have seen the danger and are publicly supporting Britain's Jews. Mark Burbeck began the group Our Fight after he witnessed the lack of public support for Jews in Israel following the October 7th massacre.
Shock at the lack of empathy that people had for the Israeli people, the Jewish people, after October the 7th. In that period, a few of us were going to these vigils that were being organised by the Israeli community, and we sort of thought, we need to do something.
Another group supporting Britain's Jews is Christian Action Against Anti-Semitism, led by pastors Tim and Haley Gutmann.
Our heart was to do something publicly that showed the Jewish people we stand with them, we love them, we're with them in solidarity. They're not alone, especially amidst this rising anti-Semitism.
David Collier is afraid demographics have already decided the future course of Britain's Jews. The most popular name for baby boys in Britain today is Mohammed.
It's a completely different country. The entire dynamic has changed, the entire atmosphere has changed, both towards Israel and in extension towards the Jewish community. It's completely different. It's a different country with a different demographic, a different outlook. Everything about it is different. You're talking to these Jewish people, and you know that things are only going to get worse for them, not better. There's no way back for the United Kingdom from this point. As far as I see it, no way back.
Falter has decided to stand and fight for the future, with the hope that more non-Jews will join him.
I think a lot of people don't realize how anti-Semitism relates to them, but they don't see it as something that's going to actually hit home, hit them. Whatever happens with anti-Semitism in this country, if extremism continues to surge in the way that it is now, this country's in for dark days, and so is the West.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, London.
It's so important to actually stand up against this hatred that's being directed against our Jewish community. It's so important that we reach out to the Jewish community, as Tim and Haley are doing. Tim, the other aspect of this one is not only the Islamists that the Jewish community are coming under threat from, but also the radical left. And this alliance between the radical left, the Marxists, the communists, have joined forces together with the Islamists on what is known as that Red-Green Alliance. And they are also giving the Islamists that support that they need to effectively spew their hatred and threats of violence against the Jewish community. Share with us your thoughts on how this needs to be countered as well.
Yeah, this is huge. It's dangerous. You can look at countries like Iran before '79, and it was the Marxists that were promoting the Islamists and standing with them. And then as soon as the Islamists were in power, they slaughtered the Marxists anyway. They're giving voice. They're united behind actually anti-Semitism. You know, it's the same spirit as the Nazis. As a Christian, we know it's that dragon, satanic spirit of Revelation 12. But they found this common ground and its hatred of Israel, and they are 100%, like we said, genocidal. Why were they marching on Saturday during a ceasefire? Because they don't want a ceasefire, they don't want peace. Those lies don't work anymore. What they want is Israel eradicated, and it's dangerous. The far left are given a voice, they're given a platform, and they're underpinning a dangerous, actually fascist philosophy.
And Tim, there was a news story that came out a couple of weeks ago, I think in the Daily Telegraph, that actually said that the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign wanted to march on the streets of London as the terror of October the 7th was unfolding. Just share with us how disgusting that was, because that was the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history. We're talking about 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals murdered, between 5,000 and 7,000 injured, many of those critical, over 251 Israelis and foreign nationals kidnapped and taken against their will into that hellhole that is Gaza. And we have there the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign wanting to celebrate the atrocities committed by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad on that evil day. Just share with us how outrageous this is. And thankfully, the Metropolitan Police Force actually said no.
Yeah, I can't believe how this isn't more shocking to the nation as a whole, why this hasn't been picked up more. While they were live streaming atrocities, while they were live streaming their rape and their murder, men, women, children, babies, the elderly, they were planning to get out on the streets while that was happening, which is clearly celebration. There's clearly something behind them, which we've always known, but it's not just celebrating that, it's pushing for the full eradication of the Jewish people to apply while it's being live streamed by Hamas. Shows you everything you need to know about that whole movement and the spirit behind it. It's demonic.
Absolutely.
They did it in Australia, didn't they?
Yep, they did. And Hayley, there was an article that from the Israeli news agency Ynet News. They reported that you've been threatened by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and by Hamas agents in London. You've been harassed on the street for wearing a Jewish star on a necklace, and yet you're still standing strong. And this is why you both need so much prayer cover for what you guys do. Just share with us what it's like to have that kind of attention from demonic people such as representatives of Hamas or the Islamic regime in Iran.
Yeah, I think it's really, we don't speak out about this and we don't talk about it because we don't even want to give any air to it. We don't even want people to worry. We don't even worry because we know that God has called us to stand with his people. We know that we are together like family, and this is what we always tell people. The Jewish people are our family, and we stand with them in prayer, but also in love, which is action, which means turning up, showing up. And so for any threat or any nasty thing that happens, it honestly doesn't concern us. And I know that might seem mad, but it doesn't, because I know that our God is stronger and bigger and he can protect us. And I know that this is the God of Israel who has conducted many miracles and looks after his people. So I feel like we're in step with the will of God for our lives, that he has called us to this, and therefore we don't fear what man can do.
Excellent. And also a little bit of a badge of honour, because if you weren't having such a big impact, you wouldn't be considered a target. Yeah. So well done for that. And Tim, just share with us how, in these critical times that we're living in, how this generation of Christians have an opportunity to learn from history, learn from the mistakes made by the evangelical Christian community in Germany in the 1930s, where the vast majority, apart from Bonhoeffer and a few other evangelical Christian leaders, remained silent in the face of the rise of the Nazis and their anti-Semitic agenda. And we know how that ended in the death camps in Auschwitz, Birkenau and others. But share with us how Christians today have an opportunity to stand once again for Israel and the Jewish people in their hour of need, and give us the kind of biblical mandate for it.
Okay, so yeah, you used the right word, opportunity. And I fear actually, by and large, we're missing that. There's a lot of silence from a lot of leaders, a lot of organisations. This is our generation's challenge as the church in terms of, understanding God's will, understanding God's heart, and aligning ourselves with that and not worrying about what man thinks. Mm-hmm. We're not called to please people, we're called to just do what the Lord commands us. So you said about Germany, 70% Lutheran, which is evangelical Christian, the rest mainly Catholic. So much silence, and people will judge us, history will judge us, should Jesus not return in the next 50 years, on how we respond to this. It's different in some ways, the 1930s. A lot of Jewish people tell us it feels like the 1930s. Even Holocaust survivors have said that spirit. But actually the big difference is the Jewish people have a nation and they're stronger than those around them who hate them. But this is a moment for Christians to show that we love the Jewish people. Biblical mandate, it's all over. It's so frustrating when I talk to Christians that don't understand this, but actually base level, we owe so much. The Bible says, you know, Romans 15:27, we have a debt of gratitude. If you've been blessed spiritually, you owe it to them to bless them materially. The Bible, the prophets, Jesus the resurrected Jesus is identified as the root and offspring of David, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He loves his people. Comfort my people, says the Lord. If you look at the people Jesus interacted with, the only non-Jews were this lady, and Jesus said, I can't take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. She didn't get offended. She didn't say, you're the dogs, we're God's children. She affirmed the Jewish people as God's children. Or the centurion, he loves our people, built our synagogue. Or Cornelius, lived in a Jewish city, prayed to the Jewish God and gave to the Jewish poor. It catches God's eye because it's very close to God's heart, and it catches God's eye because the Jewish people are the apple of his eye.
And do you want to just extend something on that one? Because I'm hearing so much within Christian circles right now of like, we support Israel biblically, but we don't support Israel politically. And just share how the two are one and the same.
Absolutely, that's another frustrating thing, you know. What's the point in praying behind closed doors? The Jewish people need our support publicly, they need it visible. There's so much in the Bible about, you know, when it's right, we speak out. The Bible talks about making our voice heard, and we have to do that publicly. To hide behind that, and by the way, that's hiding. That's not wanting to kind of like stick your neck out, say, oh, I'll pray about it. Because in history, Bonhoeffer's judged as a good man, a righteous man, and that is because he fought something and he did it publicly. To argue that we support Israel spiritually, not politically, this is kind of like going with that whole spirit of the world as well. Like some aspects of the media are so anti-Israel. You've seen the report on the BBC recently that actually to say, oh, we don't support, we love the Jews, we love Israel, but not everything Israel does, and you know, there's a scrutiny on Israel that isn't fair. To understand the spiritual aspect behind this, the devil hates the Jewish people, the devil hates Israel. We're not supposed to hold anybody and kind of like think they're infallible, but actually it's not fair to join the bandwagon and say politically, oh, we're behind Israel, just not Netanyahu, or we're behind Israel. Actually, I believe unconditional love is what's needed right now.
Amen to that. Thank you. We needed that message. And Hayley, I mean, we've just reached that huge milestone of over 500 days as of this recording since the horrors of October the 7th. Not only was this, as I mentioned in the program, the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history and the biggest massacre of Jewish people on one single day since the Holocaust, and that was over 80 years ago. But it also signified this unprecedented rise in Jew hatred around the world that we've seen just literally explode in the West and around the world. And comparisons are very much being made by the 1930s and 40s. The only difference is, instead of coming from the top level, from government level, like the Nazis, this is all coming from the grassroots, has all been instigated a lot by social media as well. Share with us your thoughts as we have passed that big 500-day milestone since October the 7th.
I think it's been 500 days of feeling every emotion that is possible to feel as a human being. I spoke at the 500-day rally, which was held in North London with majority Jewish community in the Holocaust Memorial Gardens. And my message really would be the same thing as that I would say to you, that this plethora of human emotions that we have all gone through, people that care anyway, from heartbreak, devastation and shock at the initial October 7th moment, but then also the disappointment, frustration, anger and shock at the world's response. That, quite rightly, as you were saying, that straight away they were trying to march whilst October the 7th was still being carried out, whilst they were saying gas the Jews in Sydney on the next, 24 hours after October the 7th. And then what followed was this complete complicity of silence or media, the way that they were framing as if Israel was this big bad wolf, and completely decontextualizing every single thing, taking one side, taking everything that Hamas said as truth, not verifying anything, which then later on is proven to be false, but the media pushed as fact. But the damage has already been done. And so I think recently it's really, really encouraging to see the hostages come back. And I know that the cost was a great cost. They had to release literal serial killers and terrorists. And what sort of society wants like a Jeffrey Dahmer back? and they have swapped terrorists, serial killers, for innocent people who were taken from their beds on October the 7th. And however, it is amazing to see them. It's amazing to see them back with their families, and we have to hold on to hope. This is very important, and it's going to be harder as we continue seeing the ceasefire deal, because they're going to start returning in exchange for released prisoners, bodies that were murdered by Hamas.
Which is very difficult, and very difficult for Israel as well. But the one thing you can excuse, can't you, Tim? You can excuse in some way the world. You can excuse some way in the media in their response to October the 7th for having no moral courage to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people. But the silence that we're seeing from pastors in the church of so much of the evangelical world, just unpack for this as a pastor, this complete indifference when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people, knowing that the Jewish people are the covenant people of God, and that our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, was a Jewish rabbi. He was also the Messiah as well, that the early church, the disciples, all Jewish. We read a Jewish Bible. The book of Revelation starts with Israel, and the book of Revelation finishes with Israel. Israel is intertwined in the whole entire God's story is with dealing with mankind, and yet there's this arrogance to think that the church has replaced Israel.
Honestly, like I said, I believe it's this generation's test. I mean, we owe so much to the Jewish people, the apostles that gave us the gospel, the Gentiles, Jewish, and we say Jesus is Jewish because he's still Jewish right now, and there's no excuse for the silence, the inaction. I find it so, it's like trying not to upset anybody, and you don't want to lose anybody in your church, or whatever the reason is, because it's got to be fear, because it's so easy to discern this is about right and wrong. Israel was wronged. This is a pogrom. It was disgraceful. To choose to be silent when so many people, and I'm not getting at individuals, but I'm so disappointed by the amount of people that put a Ukrainian flag up when Ukraine was invaded, but they won't speak out and do the same for Israel. This is spiritual. The devil hates Israel. He hates the Jewish people. We should have a familial connection. We came from Jewish people, the Christians. So to be silent now is just, for me, it's unforgivable, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Hayley, share with us your love for the hostages and the hostage family and all the work that you've done on their behalf. Kol hakavod in Hebrew, which is great work, well done. But just share with us what these people are going through, because you've had Shabbat dinners with Manda, whose own daughter was kidnapped by Hamas back on October the 7th. Just share with us how they're feeling, because the strength and the energy and the resolve they have is an inspiration. Constantly fighting, constantly doing media campaigns, constantly raising awareness on the plight of their loved ones. And they are colossal in what they are doing. Yeah. Just share with us what it's like to know these people and to have them as your friends, but also to encourage them and support them in their fight to bring their loved ones home.
Yeah, no problem. I think I was really inspired by my lovely husband when he was encouraging me, when he was teaching a lot of this anti-Semitism to me about being like a Ruth, like your God is my God, your people are my people. And this is the spirit that I really caught from Tim teaching me so much about historic anti-Semitism, that we are family, that they're people, they are my people too. And so when I'm spending time with the hostages and the hostage families, it's unimaginable. If you put your own self in that position and your child was taken at the same time, your wife is murdered and your parents have been murdered or burnt alive, and then you know that these savages have your family member, and then everyone's politicizing their story, deciding whether they deserve freedom or not, or contextualizing or justifying their taking, or ripping down hostage posters, or churches who say that we stand for love and we're strong and courageous, not even saying one word about the hostages or even writing to an MP. That is very deeply disappointing and sad. Especially, I get asked this question a lot, why do Christians hate us? Why do people not stand with us? Because they know that we do. but it feels like there's not that many of us to the Jewish people, especially on the last consensus. There was 27 million people that wrote down they were a Christian in the UK, and we can go to rallies every week and maybe see maximum 50 Christians standing with us. It's so awful, and it makes the Jewish people feel so alone. And particularly when Christians have one job. Jesus said that love is our greatest command. Love in action, because it's a verb. And then when Jewish people see that there is no action, there is complete silence, people sitting on the fence, and even Christian friends saying, yeah, but what about this? And not just even saying, actually from a human point of view, for children to be stolen from their beds is evil. Of course they should be brought back. That's painful, deeply painful. They're going to feel the trauma from this moment in history for a long time, and no doubt Jewish holidays and memorials will be built around this in the same way that they remember Passover. They will remember this significant time in history. Yep. And like Tim said, this is very much a test right now for the church.
Hayley, you're a strong woman, and you know, that's also opened up a lot of opportunities for you to comfort the Jewish people, both in this country and also in Israel and around the world as well. But share with us your thoughts on the silence of women's groups around the world, the UN, feminists, and their silence when it comes to the treatment of women on October the 7th, the mass rapings and the mutilations, and then the silence of what some of these female hostages, even the male hostages, had to go with in terms of sexual violence being directed against them by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Yeah, it's utterly reprehensible that the women organisations who are supposed to stand for women's rights have decided that Israeli women don't count, that Jewish women don't count, because they were silent. The UN women were silent for over 5 weeks when it was evidenced that the Jewish women had suffered sexual assault, rape, and all sorts of deviancy committed by Hamas, who live streamed it. It's unforgivable. They have been totally let down. The Jewish people have been let down by every single organisation. I can't even think of one women's group who has strongly come out and said this is outrageous. I don't think of one. And it actually shows us that all of these organisations that are set up for women are actually not for women, because it's either all women or it's not. And so if you can start being selective over who you will be compassionate towards when it comes to rape and sexual assault, you've already discounted yourself from being any value.
Absolutely. And Tim, share with us how, again, the Jewish people are being isolated. Because, I mean, the world, I mean, I look, like Hayley, I've been to the sites that Hamas, where they committed the mass terrorist attacks in southern Israel. Yeah, I've seen the cars that have been shot up. I've spoken to survivors of October the 7th. I've likewise met kind of family members of the hostages that have been taken back. It is absolutely harrowing. And yet we see that the world wants to say that Jewish women or Israeli women are different from other women. Where's the men speaking out on this? Because the role of the man is to protect the woman. Where are the male voices in this? Because this is shocking.
Absolutely shocking. And actually there's a saying, me too, unless you're a Jew. The silence, the isolation, there's the justification almost. In fact, there is clear justification. There's people celebrating that stuff. You know, like we said, they were trying to march on the 7th of October. The silence is complicity. You know, the men that are silent, the organisations like the UN, the head of the UN, I don't even want to say his name. These guys, it's more than just silence. It's aggressive. It's almost saying you don't matter. You know, this is a good thing that happened. You know, they're actually, by their silence, they're showing that they have zero compassion or love for these Israeli and Jewish women. It's actually sickening. So that's the saying, me too, unless you're a Jew. That's how the Jewish community feel. And actually, that's how history will show it's been with the women's organisations, with the Red Cross, with the UN, with UNRWA. I mean, you could go on, ICC.
Absolutely. And share your thoughts about the news story that broke a couple of weeks ago in Sydney, Australia, where you had two Muslim nurses who actually confessed that they actually have killed Israelis while it's in the hospital, while they're actually serving them for treatment. And again, this two-tier hospital system where we see Muslim nurses as well refusing to give a bed to an Orthodox Jewish boy up in Manchester because he's Jewish, and that he needed to go into a blood transfusion to have new blood in him, and yet he's treated horrifically. And then nurses wearing the Palestinian badges and doctors wearing that one, and how this whole thing has become highly politicized.
Frightening. I mean, when we say it's like the 1930s, it's like Nazi era where the doctors are actually marching, proud to show their doctors and holding banners, doctors against Israel and whatnot. It's actually very, very worrying. You know, these doctors, I don't know how many there are, but there's been various reports of their activism against Israel. These are people that are supposed to treat Jewish people and supposed to look after. We can't trust them. You saw what happened in Australia. They claimed to murder them. And Australia, by the way, there's some frightening things going on over there. We actually got involved with Australia, didn't we? We founded an organisation called Never Again Is Now. And when we did that, the guy who's in Australia, he came to one of our rallies and said, "Oh, we need that in Australia. We want to hear that voice of love and compassion." We never know what's coming in Australia, and actually Canada as well. But for us in the United Kingdom, I think we should all be alarmed that there are doctors proudly showing their doctors holding signs that are anti-Semitic.
Absolutely. Let's remind ourselves of what happened a couple of weeks ago, where two nurses were in dialogue with an Israeli, where they actually confessed to actually murdering Israelis in hospital because they're Jewish. Take a look.
This video shows two Afghani nurses at Sydney's Bankstown Hospital saying ailing Israelis coming to their facility have been killed and more will be killed if they go there.
I have a question though. All right, for sure. I have a question though. I have a question. Let's say an Israeli, God forbid.
I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
You'll kill them? So if an Israeli is in Australia and God forbid something happened to him and he comes to your hospital, would you kill him?
You have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital and I sent it to Jahannam.
They are vile, disgusting and deranged individuals.
The Health Minister and Health Secretary in New South Wales say, first off, the two aren't doctors like they seem to claim.
I could fairly quickly identify that they were not by the colour of their uniform.
And they've been suspended and are under investigation.
We will investigate this uphill and down dale. Those people subject to that investigation will not ever be working for New South Wales Health again.
The video that we saw was absolutely chilling and horrific.
It's one more of many frightening blows Jews have had to endure in recent months in Australia, where anti-Semitism is on the rise.
The brazen way, the open and confident manner in which these people spoke about killing and torturing and wishing death upon Israelis, and particularly coming from our medical professionals who we look to for care and support, was a ghastly thing to see, and it should never have happened.
Even the Australian Prime Minister has weighed in.
These people have committed what are crimes, and they should face the full force of the law.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Truly shocking report there by our friends at CBN, and great to see that Alex Rifkin is doing great work in standing up for the Jewish community. And if you look back at the very early episodes of the Middle East Report back in 2012, he was a regular guest on this program, and now he's the leader of the Jewish community in Australia. Share with us your thoughts on that outrageous video, and this I think this video should be the wake-up call for the world to realise that the Jewish people are being threatened in hospital by radicalised Islamists, and even in hospital when it's the job of nurses and doctors to care for the sick, are then using this as an excuse to commit murder.
I think it's horrifying, and it really does show how many people are emboldened by this hatred and the rhetoric that is being spread all throughout social media, by the media, in the mainstream, and by the Islamic regime. The fact that people feel so confident and okay to say something so hateful like, I have killed Israelis, whether or not that is true, it's a disgusting thing to say. And from the lens of looking at these marches where we would counter-protest a lot, and we have seen the types of people that go to these marches for Hamas, basically terrorism sympathisers. They are all walks of life, from teachers, from people who work on the underground, from the NHS, everywhere, security guards. And I think that is why the Jewish people feel vulnerable in this country, and why so many of them are questioning their future here, because it feels like there are enemies to their very existence everywhere in society. That's why it's important that Christian communities everywhere say, not on my watch, I will stand up against this hatred, and I'll stand strongly with the Jewish community.
Absolutely. And Tim, what do you think it's going to mean for Christians to really kind of wake up? As Hayley so elegantly said at the beginning of the program, effectively it's the lesson of the Holocaust, that what starts with the Jewish people never finishes with the Jewish people. If the Jewish people are not protected, they don't feel safe, then you guarantee the rest of us are not going to be safe, that our very democracy and our very freedoms that we love and cherish are under threat, because every evil ideology like Nazism or fascism, at its heart is that ideology of Jew hatred.
Yeah, and you know, personally, we don't like saying, you know, you should be a voice for the Jewish people, because if you're not, they'll come for you next. The reason is, I think we should just be a voice for the Jewish people because of love and because of, you know, this is godly and it's right. Absolutely, it never finishes with the Jewish people. You look at the Holocaust, there were other victims as well. And this ideology, and it's so self-defeating, these people that march, you know, the far left that march with the Islamists, it's so self-defeating to do that, because the Islamists do not want them. They don't want their theology. They don't want their politics. You know, you're giving voice to something that's actually hateful, because radical Islamism is fascism. It's you know, we're the only ones that count, and you know, everyone else can die basically. So it's so self-defeating. And but personally, my message to Christians, to the church, is we should be standing with the Jewish people because it's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So much silence right now.
And we've got less than 4 minutes left of the programme, Hayley. So practically, how can our viewers watching this programme today that can't not be inspired by you both as leading lights in this kind of dark world when it comes to shining the light on God's love for Israel and the Jewish people, practically walk in your same footsteps of showing that practical love and support to our Jewish community and to Israel?
Yes. I would encourage everyone to do that, everyone to step up. The first thing that everyone needs to remember is that God, the Creator, is the original OG Zionist. He invented it. And so it's really important that everyone realizes that as a fundamental, that we owe the Jewish people everything. I've got some practical things that I brought along.
Brilliant.
This is a really great thing. I think everyone who is a Christian should be having a tag which says "Bring them home." And this is really important because it shows that you actually care about the hostages. And it shows that you're not doing anything political. You're saying that taking hostages is wrong, they should be returned, and you care. Personally, I wear a Star of David, and we also wear, I see that you guys have also got your yellow ribbons.
Absolutely, and our producer Nathan bought with his own money a whole load of hostage badges for all the presenters to wear.
I love that. And so this is what you could wear, and if you wore that, all of your church, if you're a pastor, get a load for your church. This is what we did, make them available. We also have all of the hostage posters in our church to remind people to pray. We're seeing them torn down everywhere. They're not safe to be put anywhere, so at least let a church sanctuary be a place that we can be praying for the hostages to be returned. There's also a couple of things. Turn up to events, turn up to rallies. There are enough out there, and we always have a sign. Look, this one just says, "This Christian stands against anti-Semitism." Who can disagree with that? This one says, "This Christian thinks Jew hatred is rancid." There we go. And there were all sorts of things, all sorts of initiatives that the compassionate, amazing Jewish communities have put together, such as You Be Their Light. These are Shabbat candles, and they make them available to Christians. And they would love it if your church could have some of these and light them, any church. And it's really just to say, we're remembering to pray. This one is for little Ariel Bebis, who's literally 5 years old. And There is one for every single hostage, and the amount of appreciation that the Jewish community feel when we take a bag of these for our church and we leave it at the back and we just invite people to take them cannot be understated. There's so much people can do, and these things, I really brought them because these are so easy. This is so easy. Everyone can do that. You don't have to be an expert in the Middle East. You don't have to be an expert on the politics surrounding the situation or Bible doctrine. Just that.
So Hayley and Tim, thank you so much for being my special guests on this week's Middle East Report. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Keep being that guiding lights for Christians and showing our love to the Jewish community. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for watching this program at home. I think the lesson we can take away from this program is that Jew hatred is real, and it's time that the church really stood up and stood with Israel and the Jewish people at this difficult time. Let's befriend the Jewish people. Let's love them because they need us at this time. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.